in so that you guys can see really well. But basically I have all of my paint colors here, and I also have my multi-purpose sealer. The only thing that I did off camera was just dampened my brush, and I have the little container right here. So the first thing that you want to do is put the paint into the container. Again, these are the skin tone colors that I'm using, but you can use whatever color you want. There are tons of skin tone colors at Walmart or wherever else you choose to get your acrylic paint. They sell tons of different shades of brown. So I'm just going to kind of plop that into my container. And I try to make a lot of the skin tone shade because of the fact that I don't like to have to remix it, because it's really hard to replicate a color that you've already done. So I'm just going to kind of put basically like almost the whole bottle of this in there. So I'm just going to kind of put a decent amount in there. Not sure if you guys can see that, but I do have a lot of the skin tone paint. This is about how much I put into the container. So at this point you can decide if the shade is what you like or not. To go ahead and test the shade, I'm going to be using this little acrylic paper, and I'm going to grab a different brush and I'm just going to wet it a little bit. This is just a cheap brush that you can get in a little set at Walmart. And I'm just going to gently mix the paint just so that all of the pigment is blended together. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my brush and just see if this is a color that I would be okay with. So, testing the color on the paper, I think that it's pretty decent. This is the same color that Julia was, and I really, really enjoyed this color. It was nice and warm and pretty, so I really liked this particular color. So you guys can probably see. Now I'm just going ahead and swatching it, just showing you guys what the color looks like. Okay, so I do really, really like this color, so I think that I'm going to go ahead and stick with this one. I don't want to make it too light, so I don't think I'm going to use Territorial Beige. I think I'm just going to stick with this shade right here. So now that I've gone ahead and I've decided what skin tone I want the baby to be, another thing that you can do for reference is I'm going to go ahead and get the eyes. So you can look at the eye color and see if the eye color that you have looks good with the skin tone. I've seen people, you know, do all kinds of eye colors, so I would say this is a decent way to check, but it's not always accurate. But I just do that just to make sure it's not too dark for the eye color. So now that I've gone ahead and I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and throw in my multi-purpose sealer. And again, add this in the exact same way. Just go ahead and dump this on top. And you want to make sure that this is the exact same amount as you have of paint in the container. Okay, I think that's about good. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe I need just a little bit more. But you just want to make sure that you have an exact amount because you want the paint to stick. So there's my mixture. So now I'm going to go in with my brush and I'm just going to blend everything together. Make sure that this is well blended with every single paint mixture that you do. And this does absolutely nothing to the color of the paint. It just makes it shiny. So when you put it on the doll, it'll be shiny. But don't worry, we're going to go ahead and mattify it later. But yeah, go all around the edges. You can see I still have some on the edges here. Just make sure that everything is nice and well blended. Please, please, please make sure that you do this one-to-one. That's very essential because you want to make sure that all the paint is blended together really, really well. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and we've blended that all together, make sure that you get the bottom. You might want to go ahead and lift it up just to make sure that there's nothing on the bottom. I'm just lifting mine up. You guys can't see it, but I'm just making sure that there's none of that multi-purpose sealer on the bottom. So you can see that the paint mixture, the consistency didn't change, the color didn't change. Everything about this paint mixture is the exact same. The only thing that we did was we went ahead and we added in the multi-purpose sealer. And just for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and add in just a little bit more just because I really like to make sure that my paint is going to be sealed well onto the doll, because it's the worst thing when you finish painting a doll and then you start playing with it and you realize that the paint is coming off, because that's what happened with Julia. And from then on, I was very, very proactive about making sure that everything is done correctly. So this is the paint mixture that we're going to go ahead and work with for the skin tone. Now you can notice that I did not put any water in this paint mixture yet. Okay? Absolutely no water in the paint mixture. And that's because I leave it like this and then I put it in another container, and that's how I determine how much I'm going to water it down, because it depends on what layer I'm working on. For the base coat layer, I don't make it thick. Okay, so I like to just make different concentrations of it. But this is basically our base paint. So now that we've stirred all of this up, now this should be good enough base paint for the doll. But even if it's not, since we only used one color, we can always go back in and make more. But if you are mixing colors, that's the issue, you know, where you need to make a lot of it at one time. So I'm going to go ahead and put this brush into the water mixture and get it nice and clean and let it sit there. And I'm getting ready to start painting. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right on into that part of the video. I'm not even going to stop the camera or anything like that. So I'm all out of this multi-purpose sealer, so I'm definitely glad that I purchased another bottle of this, because I'm all out. I still have a little bit of the skin tone paint, but I'm completely all out of this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move everything out of the way, make sure that I have a nice clean work area. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab another container, and I'm going to get that same brush that I was just using, and I'm going to go ahead and make a wash for the first layer of paint on the doll. So to do this, just go ahead and pour out some of the skin tone paint. Now, you don't want to get too much because we still have to finish painting the doll, so you don't want to get too much, but just pour out some of that skin tone paint into the container. And obviously this is way too concentrated, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get some of the water and just drop it in there. And this is how I do every single layer of paint. I just drop it in there, stir it up a couple drops at a time. You don't want to do too much because, you know, once it gets kind of thin and watery, you can't really go back from that, but you can always add more water. So I just kind of check the consistency, make sure that it's what I want, and again, just a couple drops of distilled water at a time, in my opinion. I don't think you should just go in and just start pouring the whole bottle in there. You want to take your time and make sure that you're getting the correct consistency. So I'm just going ahead and I'm stirring it up and making sure that it's nice and well blended and mixed. And I'm just making sure that the consistency is how I like it. So you can see that it is watery, but it's not necessarily dripping off of my brush really fast. I don't make my paint mixtures extremely thin because I feel like with the way that I like to paint, that's just not going to work out for me. So I don't make my paint mixture super duper thin. Again, I paint differently than some other people might paint, but hey, that's just me. So yeah. I'm going to go ahead and grab a cosmetic wedge, and I'm going to take my water cup and I'm just going to kind of dip it in there and make sure that I'm getting it wet so that it's expanding. Because I don't pluck it until it's expanded. That just doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to pluck it before it's expanded. So I don't pluck it until it is expanded. Another way you can check the consistency of the paint is just to dab some out onto your tablecloth and see what the consistency is like. So now that I've gone ahead and I've wet my cosmetic wedge, you can see it there, I'm going to go ahead and just, I don't know if you guys can see this, but see, I'm just checking the consistency of my paint. It is very thin. I know you guys probably are like, oh, that's not that thin. This is thin in my opinion. You can see it still leaves some color. It's not completely watered down, and I don't like my paint to be super duper watered down. You can kind of see that. And I'm not really concerned about ruining this tablecloth either because it's just a tablecloth. I can just throw it out and purchase another one, so, you know. You might also want to have paper towels to check the color, just to make sure that it's what you like. So now that I have my tweezers, I'm going to go and move this out the way. I'm going to just go ahead and pluck the sponge. So for skin tone, all I do is I just pluck around the edges. I do not do anything to the center of the sponge. This is my opinion. This is what I do with my dolls. Everybody does not paint the same. So if you find somebody else's video, you're like, oh, you didn't do it like blah, blah, blah. Everybody doesn't, you know, do their dolls the same. So basically I'm just kind of taking off the corners of this